Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday night segment of The Outer Realm. We're broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 from the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM from New Orleans. We're fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers. Yeah, right there, Folgers, who have been a part of our journey since the very beginning. We're so grateful for you. Thank you so very much. And we definitely couldn't do it without you. We wouldn't want to do it without you. You're like part of our Outer Realm family. So thank you. Also, very grateful for Justin Snicker, aka Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, for his contribution of his time, his music, and his voice for the intro that you all just heard. He's an award-winning composer of Halloween horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found on all of your favorite music streaming platforms. So thank you, thank you. Also, big thank you to Steve McGinnis, the artist behind the banners and logos here at the show. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram. Does crazy Halloween stuff and horror movies, and it's just fantastic, but does phenomenal commission pieces of every type. So what's new? What's new over here at the network? Well, Amazon Alexa is what is new. So if you have Alexa, all you have to do is say, Alexa, podcast United Public Radio, and the whole thing comes up and you get to watch all the shows. Right? Isn't that cool? So tonight we welcome fellow Canadian Morgan Knudsen. I have been waiting for this because she is really a fellow paranormal researcher, and she's just wonderful, just a delightful person. You guys will know her from Haunted Hospitals and Paranormal 9/11, and she's just wonderful. So we're going to be talking paranormal, parapsychology, all this fun stuff, and she's just really going to be a lot of fun. I know Amelia's missing this and she was really looking forward to it. It's just not really been her summer so far, her year. So we're just wishing her well, and hopefully she'll be able to listen in. So I know, but hey, you guys are all chiming in. So this is great. Thank you. Thank you. Look at you guys. Dolly, hello. Make me want to break out in song all the time. So, so hello. It's been a long time since we've had like a straight up paranormal show. I mean, we get a lot of blends and mixes of different things. We get to talk about a lot of different topics, but paranormal is something that I have spent 2 decades doing, and just really have gone further away from it with the shows, and not on purpose. Just the fact is that there's been so many other people reaching out wanting to come on, and we do have a lot of people who also will message me and say, hey, can we maybe have this topic, or can you consider maybe this guest? And then we have so many authors and researchers of all walks of life messaging and saying, hey, would you be interested in this sort of topic? And I just find, like, as big as the paranormal community is, there are so many other communities, and we're very diverse here on the show. We're very fortunate that we'll do things like ancient history and ancient mysteries, history and mysteries, as well as, paranormal, parapsychology, and ufology, anything high strangeness. But it is so diverse. So tonight is a treat because it brings me back to my roots a little bit, which is the paranormal. And Morgan being, again, a fellow Canadian, and also, within the whole media field, and having a great understanding of how that all works and research and so on is really phenomenal. So I'm really anxious to hear how it all began for her, because believe me, it all begins with something or some experience, and it's so different for all of us, but it's just at the same time really, really fascinating. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce our special guest, Morgan Knudsen. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
I love
Finally, we get to connect finally.
We do. We do. I've really been looking forward to the show because, we see each other passing through social media. I'm like, oh, good. Glad to see she's got stuff going on. And, but I think it's wonderful. And congratulations, Blue Ant, great company. I've always loved filming with them. They've just been so easy to work with compared to others.
Oh, they're spectacular, and they I've done so many shows with them over the years, and it's like, yeah, they're just a pleasure to work with. Like, they're just good people,
They are.
and they want to learn, which is what I really love. Like, they really care about the subject, and they want to learn, which is, for me, is great.
It makes a big difference because
Yeah.
you do really have a wide range of people who enjoy the topic, the paranormal, and you have your what I call, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, just some people they just don't have anywhere to go, or maybe they can't get out, but they become your couch investigators, and they just wait for these shows to come on every week, and it's the highlight of their experiences for some, right?
Oh, totally. And I think that's where, like, people like us, that's where our role really becomes important, is the fact that, what information are we bringing to the table? And, that was one of the reasons why they brought me on to their team, was to make sure the right information's getting out,
Yes.
because I think they really recognized that there was there's this horrific gap between real and fantasy.
There
With the
is.
shows, right? So, yeah, so they're just like,
True.
"We really need help to figure out, like, which is which," and I'm just like, "Yeah, no problem." Like, that'd be my pleasure to do, because that's what I
It's
try
it's
to do anyway.
it's rampant, and
So
I know
bad.
I've spent
Yeah.
20 years filming, and the D word seems to be something that doesn't get left on the cutting room floor, no matter how many answers that you may give. And I've always joked about the fact that the whole world probably thinks I run around screaming demon, where I'm the more logical person. I'm yelling out psychokinesis, you know, and
Ah,
it's like, but nobody
yeah.
nobody understands it or wants to hear it. And even working with people over the years, there's no gentle way of saying
Yeah.
that no, this is not what you have going on, but you're trying to delicately say maybe you're projecting energy. I'll just send links, psychokinesis or telekinesis. If you see yourself in this, it's easier for them to think that there's something else.
Yeah. It's like trying to tell somebody they're an alcoholic, and just be like, "Look, we gotta have a hard conversation here."
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, it's true,
It is.
but it's
It is.
important, though. I
It's the
think
thing.
using
Yeah.
that right language is really important, and
Mhm.
and getting that out there, getting people familiar with it. Like, in the way I always talk about it with the studios, is the fact that, this is way cooler, because this is where the real magic is. Like,
Yes.
this isn't, like, Hollywood made up woo ha
Mhm.
ha. This is
Mhm.
real life, peer studied, peer reviewed
Mhm.
cases and phenomenon that's been that this is amazing. Like, this is,
Yes.
like, change your life level incredible. So that's the way I always kind of sell it to them, and then they kind of get excited about it. They're like, "Well, like, what do you mean? I want to know." I'm like, "Well, yeah, you
Yeah,
do
we
want
don't
to
know what
know.
we're
This is
excited
really
about, but it
cool."
sounds really good.
Yeah.
Right, right. Well, I couldn't think of a better person to to take on the task, shall we say, of changing the mindset within the field. So let's start off with I mean, we don't all just fall into this, but for you, you may have. So with your background. So why don't we start off with your humble beginnings, shall we say, and then maybe move on to that one
Sure.
personal experience that knocked you over and said, "Oh, I have to do this."
Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah, well, it's funny because, like, really, from the get-go, it was a passion for me, and what I found really interesting, like, when I wrote my second book, that was the one thing I really noticed, was that all of these people in parapsychology had the same pull. they had that same instinctual calling for something bigger.
Mhm.
And that there was something bigger out there that we should be connected with. It was really interesting. And for me, it started like really early, like 9 years old.
Right.
And it was interesting for me because when I was going through the book and I was seeing this over and over again, I'm like, okay, this isn't an accident. Like there's, here we've got people like JB Rhine, people like Lizette Coley, people like, all these big names in parapsychology. Everybody I think has this instinctual calling, and they're the ones that chose to follow it. But I think we all have it,
Mhm.
to some degree. So for me, yeah, it started really early, and then it wasn't until about, I'd say, like 6 years or so into forming Entityseeker research and teachings that
Mhm.
I found out my great grandfather had it as well, and he was very noted in the parapsychology field, and he was
Mhm.
a physician and an astronomer and poet
Mhm.
and all of these things. But he was also the president of some of the parapsychology associations here in Canada. So, but I didn't know that, and so it's really interesting how this kind of pulls you ahead.
Mhm.
Like I think this subject wants to be out there. It's got its own
Mhm.
consciousness. But yeah, so that kind of that was kind of how I got my start. And then yeah, I had a experience when I was a kid and it was like, well, my parents and we lived in a haunted house, and that really set the bar at that point. I
Mm.
mean, I was really fortunate because I grew up in the era of, Carrie Gaynor and Lloyd Auerbach on TV, and there
Yes.
was no like, ghost hunting shows that just didn't even
Oh, there are
exist.
scariest places on earth.
Oh, that I
That
see. I don't even know if
that
that
was a
one was around
that
at
was
the
a
time.
great show
Was that
because
still
they
around?
did experiments and stuff too, which was kind of interesting. No, but it had Linda
Yeah,
Blair was your narrator, or was the host, I
the
think.
host. Yeah,
And
that rings
and
a
they had that
bell.
creepy little woman from Poltergeist speaking
Right,
in the
right, right.
background. I
Yeah.
loved her.
Yeah, she was a skeptic too. She was like a massive skeptic.
Yes.
Like, didn't believe in anything. Like, it was
Right. And there she was,
there she
which is
is, right?
incredible.
Just, like,
Yeah.
sucked into this
I
whole thing.
know.
But, yeah, so but, yeah, so that was but I was really big into sightings at the time with, like, Linda Moulton Howe and Tim
Yeah.
White.
That
Those were,
yeah.
yeah, sightings was the biggie. And, yeah, and so I kind of got to grow up in that world. My grandmother had horrendous experiences with the paranormal, and she was completely against the whole thing and
Oh
whatever. And
boy.
well, that didn't last. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was crazy. So it was just one of those things. Like I was just kind of like slowly introduced to it throughout the years, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. I mean,
Mhm.
there was never a choice. It was just like, oh, this is it. Like
Mhm.
this is the thing. So, you know,
Mhm.
X
Right.
20
Right.
20 years into the 20, almost close to 25 years into this now, but getting there. And it's
That's a
like,
hard one. Be
yeah, it's
because, I mean,
cool.
Lloyd hasn't had it easy.
No,
When you're talking about parapsychology, like,
yeah,
he didn't have it easy.
not at all.
It's really difficult to, get out there and say, you know, you have to look at the logical side of everything. It's easier to just accept everything else, but you have to, as a researcher, you have to delve and you have to go through the process of elimination to see what's left. I would always say, if I come up with a question mark, I'm freaking ecstatic,
Yeah,
right? Just because you get to
absolutely.
keep going.
Yeah, yeah, the question mark is what you want. It's
Yes.
like once you rule everything out, that's when it gets cool, because then you're like,
Right.
"Oh, it's not these things." You're not
Right.
going to bed at night going, Am I just fooling myself?" No, I'm not. Like we ruled this
Right.
out, and now we've got something amazing here.
Tangible. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's funny because I mean, I've had, Elliot Van Dusen on the show a few times. And the first time it was on, we was just sort of like feeling our way around and, you know, and he actually was working with a family who who I had worked with. And I'm thinking, I can't find anything. And he's just like, okay, you have to tell me exactly what you went through because, oh my God, I know. So we were able to kind of connect on that a little bit. And, he's like, I need to try to find these logical reasons. But how do you,
Yeah.
when you work with somebody who is just focused on, I mean, I have to say part of it is conditioning, part of it is media,
Yep.
upbringing, things like that. And how do you get them to change gears?
Oh gosh, sometimes you can't. Sometimes if they are hyper focused on that one thing,
Right.
that's it. Like if they've made up their mind already that you're screwed, which is, I mean, one of the things that I used to tell clients all the time, where I would say, well, do you think this is possible that it could be something else? And they would go, oh, no, 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 I know it's haunted. I'm like, well, then why am I here? Right? If you already know that and you know what to do with it, then what am I doing
Yeah.
here? Right? Then
Right.
obviously you're not willing to have a conversation. Because I mean, the parapsychology and the paranormal is about possibilities, right?
That's
It's like
right.
that's
Yes.
all it is. And in order to entertain all the possibilities, one of those possibilities is that this is something else that's going on. But yeah, like so those people tend to not like me too very much, because like it's basically my approach has been very different right from the beginning, which
Right.
is the fact that our emotional center, how we are, what we project into the world, we get a mirror back of where we are emotionally, and whether or not it is reflected back to us in bad relationships or bad jobs or negative haunting or whatever it is, the universe is constantly telling you like what you've got going on. And so for me, that's always been my approach. It's like, it's less about the phenomenon out there, and it's more about, well, what is this telling you? Like, what is your environment telling you right now that you've got to heal up if you've got this stuff going on? Because it's just completely intrinsically connected with each other. And like parapsychology, like Scott Rogo and Raymond Bayless and Dr. William Roll, they went into this so deeply when they were still alive. And this intrinsic emotional connection that we have with our world, like how we are, what we bring to the table is creating our reality around us. And it's like, not to go too far down to the rabbit hole of like quantum physics and stuff, but
But that's huge.
that's what it is, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what it is. And so it's like, okay, you've got this stuff going on. You can label it however you want to label it, but at the end of the day, this is going to come back and sit in your lap. And I mean, I've been there. Like I've done it with cases that I've been involved in, and and I know this firsthand. And and some people are willing to do the work, and other people, they realize, oh man, that's an aspect of myself I don't want to touch, and I'll live with the haunting. I don't care. But yeah, it's like
But
you
it's such an
gotta
easy
connect it in.
fix, really, isn't it?
I think it is and it isn't. Like, I mean,
Well, mindset. You work on yourself, and like
yeah,
projection of energy starts with you.
100%, 100%. And I mean, I think if you're not afraid to go there, but some people have a real hard time sitting with themselves, and they will do everything they can to not have to do that.
Yes.
Like, whether it be, I mean, some people cover it up with alcohol, some people cover it up with drugs, some people cover it up with bad relation. I mean, whatever. And then, they just kind of bash it down until you've got something that's manifested outside of yourself, or it's whatever. But some people would rather put up with like the worst thing than confront whatever's going on with them. That's just how it's just how people are. I mean, we've been like that for centuries.
It's true. I find that whenever I would work with families, I would just work on what's going on up here. I always say to myself, okay, there's something that's making you think that this is going on.
Yep.
And it's my job to take the weight for a little while, try to figure out what's happening, and trying to ask the hard questions. Like I've gone to the extent of asking for psychological assessment, sometimes two. But I need a backup for this one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then trying to, I want permission from the doctors to work with people. And I always get it, as long as like, don't let them go off the meds. Right. So it's a matter of, okay, do you end up, is the medication working?
Yep.
If it's not, then it's like, okay, maybe we are looking at something a little bit different. Again, process of elimination. But it's, if you can change what's going on up here, and I've been able to do that. I used to have like a 1.5 year waiting list. So I would work with people online or through the phone at the time, and just work with reframing the conditioning and so on. And I'll tell you something, by the time I was freed up, they're like, no, we're good.
Yep.
That's just changing it, the perspective.
Yeah. And changing that that center, whatever that person's got going, changing that center changes the activity around them. It immediately will shift that. And people think, well, what am I supposed to do? What's the physical thing I'm supposed to do? Because I think they're so used to the, the TV shows of getting on, doing some sort of voodoo dance and jumping around and doing a thing. And it's like, it's not about, I mean, if that helps you get to where you need to be, then fine. But it's like, if at the end of the day, if you're not shifting what's going on internally, I mean, you can move across the country and you're not going to get any different, because you're bringing you everywhere.
Have you run into, have you been able to explain everything away through parapsychology, or have you had those, those cases? I hate to say case per se, because people are people, locations are locations, but have you run across something where it's like, okay, I have no explanation for this and nothing is adding up and nothing. It is truly a paranormal. We can't figure it out.
Well, I think they're connected to each other. Like usually, when we get, if we get somebody who is, let's say, for example, just maybe, I don't know, repressing being beaten up in a bad relationship or something like that. And then they're now in a situation where they've got like a actual genuine haunting of something that's coming and attacking, and that's like beating the crap out of them or something like this. Then usually you can, if you interview the person enough, you can figure out how that's being mirrored back to them. And, sometimes it's, they find another bad boyfriend that's doing it, but sometimes they'll find an entity that's doing it, so it's like, they're going to attract that same thing until they start to heal that stuff up. So I think it's completely connected with each other. And it's not the fact that, that's all in the person's head. No, it's not. Like, there's something physically in the space that's conscious and it's doing its thing. But it's like, until you get rid of that, you're just going to move on from one to another, to another, to another. And it's like that in life. It's like people that don't clue in why they're getting treated badly by a boss. They quit that job, they go to the next job, and they're getting treated badly by the next boss. Well, okay, because you didn't fix the first issue. And it doesn't make the boss in your head. Boss isn't in your head. The boss is real, but it's like, you're just gonna keep bringing that in until you get that right. So
what about, like, moving into a problem, moving into something that's already there? Full-fledged haunting, or leftover residual energy of the people who've been there before you, maybe?
Yeah, well, I mean, residual energy, I mean, I mean, most people can experience that at some point. I mean, that's just, I think everybody for the most part has got some sort of a story about that, sort of that environmental stuff. But like here in Alberta, that's really rampant here, because we've got a lot of really screwed up wiring here in homes. So there's a lot of like places that just have horrific amounts of electromagnetic activity, which seems to be very interconnected with the residual stuff here. So so that's kind of its own thing. But yeah, no, I mean, there's people that move into these houses where they think, it just came out of the blue, but you've got to be resonating with this stuff in order to experience it. Like, you'll get a family, for example, that'll have a horrific time. They'll move out. You'll have another family move in. They're at a different, in a different emotional state. They've got a different dynamic going on, and then they never experience anything. And they look at the last family, and then they're like, oh, it's a hoax. No, you're just not at the same wavelength. You're just not experiencing this stuff, right? You're not resonating with it. So it's like, even that, it's again comes back to like, okay, well, why are you resonating with this? Like, there's something going on that's keeping this in your space. Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit of, I'll use the Amityville Horror, because I mean, so much of a mix of literally everything in the pot. It was unbelievable. And yet, after speaking with one of the boys, and he realized that George was ex-military, may have been part of some kind of MK thing going on. Well, there is a projection and a half, I would think. So did he attract something, or did he stir up what was already there? Is his energy just clashing? Was it the perfect storm of events? Like, what was it exactly that made everything go array?
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's a good example, because here you've got an area too that had some really horrific stuff going on the property. You had
Yes.
already that history that was kind of built up there and whatever. So I mean, whatever was there or that had been birthed from that or whatever it is, I mean, somebody that's unbalanced, you've got a lot better chance of sort of connecting in with that negative stuff if your brain's already kind of there. And unfortunately, a lot of people that are in trouble like that usually do end up having some pretty horrific experiences with this stuff. I've never met somebody that's bipping along and has been, it deals with stress well and has been, relatively happy and is pretty positive. I've never had somebody like that come to me and be like, oh, I'm having the worst time. It just doesn't happen. It's always, there's always something going on with the people, like every single time.
Well, I think you're going to be, it's like a double-edged sword. What came first, the chicken or the egg, that sort of thing. Are you projecting it and creating it, or are you attracting something? Are you,
or both?
Or both? Are you acting out because of, what you're picking up? I mean, let's face it, we're made up of energy. It's not hard for us to be affected by energy.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think you just see more and more of it, but I just don't think people have an understanding. I mean, for me, I look at it like, gosh, we're really powerful individuals. Like, we are powerful beings that we can, we're living this human experience.
Yeah.
We're this incredible energy having a human experience. Whereas people, they can't quite grasp the fact that, no, we're the powerful beings that can open and close doors and create footsteps and all this crazy stuff. It's just easier to give credit to something else.
Well, and not only that, is that asking people to accept that level of empowerment is a exercise in responsibility, because in order to embrace that power, you have to be able to step out of being the victim. And a lot of people won't do that. They're not ready to do that, because if they admit, okay, I am this spiritual being and I create my reality and I can do all these things, then it's like, oh no. Oh no. Like, you mean I can't blame that guy over there for this, that, and the other thing that's happening. I can't blame this thing. That's tough for some people, especially in this day and age. Letting go of the victim mentality. It's like, yeah, now, if you embrace this, then, you've got to step into a newfound power, which is an incredible thing. It's wonderful. And like, to me, that's the core of parapsychology, is that empowerment.
But people don't like change.
People don't like change, and people don't like to be responsible for stuff going on when it's not
right.
Good
right.
stuff.
See, I own that crap, man. If I project, I want to own that.
Yeah. Well, because it empowers you to change it, right? Like, that's the
does.
thing. It empowers you to change it. But some people, man, they're just like, I don't know. I want to blame Joe Blow over there. I want to blame that entity over there. And that's
now
easier.
I want to be that kid in Stranger Things. I will mess you all up with my energy.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. It's fascinating to think about it, but it's just, you know what it is? It's like the pseudoscience sort of thing is how people look at it too. And it amazes me. Maybe it's just because they don't like science. I don't know. As soon as you add that this is like, no, this is science-based.
Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah. Well,
they don't want to mix them.
No, they don't want to mix them. I think somehow, so I had this comment come up. This was a while ago, but the first show we did on my podcast, we did, or it wasn't the first show, but it was the first show that we did with Dr. Eben Alexander, who, for the audience, had an incredible near-death experience, and he wrote the book Proof of Heaven. We do regular shows with both him and Karen Newell. And I remember I think it was on Twitter, somebody came forward and was like, well, how can you have him on the show? He's a neuroscientist. I'm like, but yeah, no kidding.
That's the point.
That's the point. And he's just like, yeah, but this is supposed to be about the paranormal. He's just going to explain this away. And I'm like, but he had, right. Well, and he had like probably the most documented near-death experience on the planet, where people were people were blown away by what happened, because the part of his brain that the doctors usually all the, the naysayers come forward and they're saying, oh, it's the brain was hallucinating because you're near death or whatever.
Yes.
But with Eben Alexander's case, that part of the brain was off. Like, it was off. It wasn't working. He was,
Wow.
yeah. And he had this incredible positive experience, a beautiful, beautiful experience. And, it was like the person just couldn't reconcile the fact that it was this neuroscientist was going to be on the side of parapsychology. And I was just like, yeah, but that's how it is though. There are so many academics that are doing, I've got so many friends in academia that this is literally what they've done for 50 years. And they're not writing it off. They're actually proving that this is something that's bigger than us. This is consciousness. This is, life, survival after death. This is all of these things. But it was the idea that these two things went together, it was right?
I know. Well, hey, not everybody are ready to have their minds blown like that,
Yeah.
But I think it's fascinating because you see articles coming up all the time. Scientists are saying, yes, they believe there's your essence leaves the body. Like, wow, it took you a while to catch up. A lot of us already know this, and I think parapsychology is part of that. But then you have actual scientists going, well, now we agree with you.
Yeah. Well, I always used to joke, science kind of has this, this interesting timeline where a new idea comes out and then everybody hates it and it's wrong. And then they're like, this is crazy. And then people start advocating for it and they're like, oh yeah, we think that's what it is. And everybody's still going I don't know about that. And then all of a sudden it was their idea to start with. And now science has caught up to it. And they're like, oh yeah, well, we knew that. And it's it's every idea is like this, right? It all follows the same trajectory, but it's so silly. And that's where we're seeing now is that people are catching up and they're realizing, oh my God, this is laboratory stuff,
it is
huge.
Yeah. It is. It's huge. Really, if you think about it, nothing is black and white. Nothing is cut and dry. And, when you see things, I believe we see all kinds of things, but I also believe that they're dimensional, interdimensional, multidimensional. There's so much more to it. And you're not going to necessarily work your way to that unless you go through the steps.
Yep. Yeah, there's no elevator.
No, steps for real.
Steps. Yeah. There's no elevator. And there's no, it's interesting because there's no quantum leaps in this. It's and I think part of that's because we really do get shown what we're ready to see. I think we have to be ready to see it before it kind of shows up for us. And it's slower for some people and faster for other people. And everybody's kind of on a different place in the continuum. But like you were saying, I mean, just even into the interdimensional stuff, it's we see such a tiny fraction of this planet. And I've my little snake Galen, bless his heart, he sees and here's a physical being that science is completely aware of, that sees in infrared, sees in UV, can taste, smell, he can see heat. I mean, he experiences the world in a completely more advanced way than we can ever possibly imagine. He's seeing full spectrum. He's seeing all this stuff. And it's and here we are back here, seeing this tiny little fraction of the planet. And it's funny with him, just to give everybody an idea, we're positive here that he sees visitors that come and visit with us.
Doubt.
Absolutely. Just last night, sitting on the bed with him and we were playing and doing their thing. And all of a sudden, and he's done this so many times, he sits bolt upright and he looks at what appears to me to be nothing. And it's he recognizes somebody and it's excitement. And he looks and he looks and he listens somebody's talking to him for 20 minutes. And
that's so fascinating.
Yeah, you can't get his attention. He's completely immersed in what he's seeing. And he listens, and sometimes he'll follow it around the room a little bit. And then last night, so we're sitting here and this is all happening. My door begins to close all by itself, closes halfway, stops, and then closes the rest of the way. And then he quit. And it was like, oh, isn't that interesting? So somebody came and left. Somebody came and talked to him and left. It was really cool, but it happens with him all the time. So it's like, here you've got this little guy that's perceiving this world in so many different dimensions, you know, and I mean, we're clueless.
I love that it's a
People are
snake
clueless.
because
Yeah.
people don't look at them
Yeah.
as these, you know, like a cat or a dog.
Yeah.
And, you know, 'cause I used to have a lot of parrots and I said they're cuddlier than a cat or a dog. People go, that's ridiculous. I'm like, no, for real. They
Yeah.
love to cuddle. And it's the same I find with reptiles.
That's Galen. Yep.
Yeah. Say they don't have that same connection. So they don't pay attention. They think they just want to sit there all day in a tank. And there's nothing beyond that.
Yeah, not
And
at all. And
clearly,
oh
right?
yeah, like he is ridiculously smart. I mean, I've seen him pick tools up and use them. He problem solves, and he's 20 years old. He just turned 20 in June.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, and I mean, this little guy, it would blow people's minds what he can do, what he acknowledges. It's unbelievable. And but his interactions with whatever comes through here, I mean, is really, really phenomenal. And it's really quite amazing. But yeah, he's such a cuddly little guy too. He loves to snuggle up and watch movies and hang out.
I love that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love
he's
that.
just the best.
It's so obscure, but it's just like they're all sentient.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
know, you don't
Yeah.
know that little spirit who he was before.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is I always joke that he used to be a baker in a past life because one of his favorite things to do is get in the kitchen and make stuff. And it's like, and he loves it. Like he's in there and he's learning stuff and flattening his cookies out. It's so funny. And
See, I love that.
yeah, he's just the funniest little guy. And it's like he's got a thing for it. Like he'll sit and watch baking shows. I'm not a cook or a baker, like at all. Like I don't have any interest in it. I'm like, no, not my thing.
Yes.
I've had to learn because he's like in the kitchen doing it, like just pulling stuff out of the cupboards and doing, and I'm like, okay, I'm like, this is what we're doing. But yeah,
that is hilarious.
Yeah. So I'm
That
like, I
is
swear to God, he was a
hilarious.
baker or chef or something.
That is so funny. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. You need to take videos and post them when he's doing stuff like that because that's just fantastic.
Yeah, I try to get photos, but it's like it's so hard because he's a handful.
Yes.
So it's like I think I just have to set a camera up because
Yeah.
it's like because I
And
can't
just have
they're
video
just juggling,
his
right?
little escapades. I know.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, he's a doll, and but what a teacher! Like what
Mhm.
a teacher! Like I'll be doing something in the or be preoccupied. Like I'll have be stressed out about something or whatever, and he'll come and Mom, like he'll tap me like, hey, like
Mm.
look over here,
Aw.
yeah, like he knows, he's just so in the moment and he's so connected to that consciousness
But I
stream.
think part of that
You know?
and his growth is that you recognize it and you nurture it.
I think that's huge with any animal,
Yes.
it's like when you can connect into that and they know that
Mhm.
you're receptive. And I mean, it's for him, it's been that way ever since he was, yay big.
Mhm.
But and just tons of time put in, like anywhere between 3 to 5 to 6 hours a night,
Mhm.
with him every night. But it's like just putting that time in and just and I think connecting into myself
Mhm.
and learning how to connect to myself has allowed me the connection with him
Mhm.
and with others as well. It's like if
Mhm.
we're not connected in with ourselves, we can't connect with anybody else. So
Mhm.
he's a teacher.
Mhm. See, that's why he's here.
Yeah. That's why he's here. Well, and the
Yeah.
funny thing is too, like, so his name, Galen, Galen was actually a Greek healer, and he was one of the first physicians. And Galen was one of the first physicians to in history to make the connection between our mind manifesting illness in our body. He was
Hmm.
the first guy to propose it. And then of course, the Greek symbol for healing is the snake around the
That's
staff.
right.
So
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah,
That's right. Oh,
yeah.
wow. I love that. I love that. Um, let's talk about since we're talking about parapsychology and science and experimenting. I think this would personally make a fantastic series, but is recreating the Philip experiment or the skull experiment.
Yeah. Philip experiment was one of my absolute favorites.
Right.
Absolute, and it's to me that is the core of this stuff that every single investigator needs to get. And so many of the people that are coming forward that we're seeing on television, they're getting these shows and whatever, they've never heard of it, and it's like, this is it, man. Like,
This is it. So can we talk a little bit about what we'll start with the Philip experiment, just so everybody, because you're right, there's not a lot of people who are even aware of it. So do you want to take it and explain to people from the parapsychology standpoint and everything else? What was it?
Oh gosh, so the Philip experiment was an experiment that took place in Ontario, in Toronto, in the 1970s, and it started with a group of people from Mensa, and there were some healthcare workers and whatnot that got together, and the Toronto Society for Psychical Research, that sat down and decided they were going to create a consciousness from scratch. And they wanted to know if that was possible. So they used the Victorian era seance type settings with table tipping and Ouija boards and all sorts of things like that. And they created a character by the name of Philip. And so instead of trying to invoke a spirit that they already knew somebody was dead, they created a character, and they built up this guy, this sort of womanizing medieval dude named Philip, who was supposedly like murdered. I think he murdered his wife or something was the story, and or murdered his mistress or something like that. And but there was this whole backstory. So they talked about it enough that they sort of convinced themselves that this guy had existed, and they sat down and they started to contact him, and they worked at this and worked at this and worked at this and couldn't get it to go. And then they realized that they had been too stoic about it. They were kind of coming to these meetings and like sitting down and focusing and whatever. And when they looked at how these seances were built back in the Victorian era, they realized that people were getting together and having fun. They were just finding joy in it. Like, they were laughing, they were talking, they were having a good time. And they thought, man, like, that's the one thing we're not doing. Like, we're kind of being too serious about this. And then lo and behold, it was like within 48 hours of them bringing that element to the table, stuff started to actually happen. And Philip started to respond. And he was to the point where whatever this thing was doing, it was moving chairs around, it was moving objects, it was responding to questions through raps on the table. It was behaving like it was an individual entity, which it kind of was. It was like a thought
like
form.
a tulpa.
Like a tulpa, yeah.
Right.
And this thing, but it could only answer questions within the scope of knowledge of the people at the table. So they were they realized that if they asked it something and somebody had the wrong answer, like somebody had the wrong information, it would answer with the wrong information. So it was just this
taking it from.
Yeah, it was this extension of their consciousness. It was just wild. And then they tried the experiment again to see if it would work a second time with a character they call Lilith, and it was a completely different group of people. And it, lo and behold, it worked again. So it was like it was creating consciousness outside. And I think it was, to me, it's one of the premier demonstrations of how consciousness is not emergent from the brain. It's fundamental from outside. And that, to me, is the significance of the Philip experiment, is that it doesn't take the brain to produce that.
No, I agree. I think it's a lot. Like, I've done table tipping. I've had tables move. I've had glasses move. I've done all that stuff through experimenting, which is, I've always found fascinating. Again, projection of energy. And what I find interesting is people who play with Ouija boards or spirit boards, or it's the same idea. It's like you ask a question, and I would have to tell people, just clear your mind if you're going to do that, because otherwise your answer is going to come from your own head. A lot of times.
And
or the head of somebody at that table. Seance, the same thing.
Absolutely. Like, and the Ouija board, it's funny, some colleagues of mine and I, we've had some incredible experiences with the Ouija board, to the point where we were actually getting different languages coming through that nobody at the table was speaking.
So
And
that's interesting.
phenomenal. Yeah, phenomenal.
Yes.
And we got to know a group of these spirits that were coming through regularly all the time.
Mhm.
And we ended up completely elaborating on the board, which included like emotions, and we included all sorts of things, months of the year and all sorts of stuff like that. And we've gotten to the point now where it's completely fluent. It's like texting. But the stuff that has come through has been phenomenal, including like I say, we had one entity that called himself M. His full name was Mokala, but in Africa they usually go by their initial, because
That's right.
us white people can't pronounce their names.
That's right.
So they usually go by M, and we didn't know that either at first. But he said, no, call me M, call me M. And we asked him where he was from, and he came back with Mother Mola. And we had no idea what that was. We were like, Mother Mola, what the hell is that? And it turns out that Mola, when we Google it, it was this tiny little town, and I mean like a speck of a town in the middle of Central Africa. And so it was Mother Africa, Mother Mola. And after that, he would give his answers, but they would all be in African, all be in the African language. And it was the dialect from that area. Which, I mean, everybody at the table was either Caucasian or Indigenous, and none of us were Canadian. Like, that's it. And we're Canadian, like, we don't know. And so we're getting this, but we're having to use Google Translate to like translate the stuff that was coming through. It was really cool. And so we've met some absolutely fascinating people over the years through that. And I know people like to say, oh, no, it's all fake. It's not. No, it's just a tool.
It is just a tool. It is just a tool. I think if people do it properly, again, you have to clear your minds, because it's easy when you're asking certain questions. It's easy to get the answers that they know you want, but pulling it out of your own consciousness.
Yeah.
So go in there blank. I always say, just hum a song.
Yeah,
say a nursery
absolutely.
rhyme. Just say anything that in your mind that can just take you outside the box a little bit. I also really enjoyed like the skull experiment. I thought was really interesting. Like, just
again, very similar.
Projecting things out everywhere. Like, that was crazy. And they did that one in England, I believe, didn't they?
That was England, yeah. Skull, England,
Yes.
And they they had a group of sitters. It was actually very, very similar to what my great grandfather was doing here in Ontario.
I love that.
where he had a group of sitters. But it was funny because with my great grandfather, his name was Albert Durrant Watson. He didn't believe in any of this stuff, and it was his friends that kind of roped him in, and they just wanted to use his house. They were just like, can we just use your back room because we want to do this thing? And he was like, what the hell are you guys doing? And they're like, no, it's okay. We're just going to be here for a couple of nights or whatever. And he was like here he is. He's a physician, right? So he's just like, oh,
very logical.
I don't know what you're doing. He's like, this is weird. But he, so lo and behold, he goes and he's sort of sneaking a peek into his back room, like, what the hell are they doing in there? And then they realize they've got this channeler by the name of Louis Benjamin, and he's sitting there and he's giving all this information from a group of entities called the Humble Ones. And so very similar to Skull in the sense that they're getting these messages and whatever, and relaying it. And AD, the more he listened in, what really turned his head about it was the fact that the medium who didn't know him from a hole in the wall. This guy was like grade 6 education, didn't and he ended up channeling AD's mom, and it was like same cadence, same nickname, information was, and AD was like, I don't even know you, buddy. Like, how did you, none of these people knew my mom. You sure as hell didn't know my mom. What's going on here? And he ended up writing 2 books on the subject and transcribing what was going on.
Amazing.
Sittings. Yeah. And the books are incredible, and they're like way ahead of their time. Like, they're just they're so cool. But Skull Experiment, like, very similar, where here they are getting all of these, they're having these sittings, and they're getting these profound messages. And I know they got a lot of criticism because they wouldn't let people in on it. Like, they were like, they We don't want people invited. But I get that. Like,
well, yeah, it's an experiment. It's like, it's like contaminating the whole experiment. I wouldn't want to do that either. I just find it interesting how, objects could just disappear and just show up and just drop down on your lap or your table. You're just kind of like, where did this come from? And you're just communicating this. I truly believe the consciousness, especially on a mass level, is extremely powerful. 2 examples that we can begin with. And when I say Tulpa, Slender Man, started in a chat room. Over time, groups of people from around the world with intention created this being that people actually started having sightings of.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, Slenderman's an interesting.
We're seeing this.
Yeah, well, Slenderman's an interesting one too, because I think you kind of got to wonder, like, okay, this guy creates it for a horror story online and whatever, but I almost kind of wonder, was it him creating it, or was there some sort of like, download of information from somewhere? Like, you know what I mean? Like, was this kind of like an inspired creation? It makes me kind of wonder, like, I
don't know. Like, think about it. Like, I've experimented just with consciousness, and I've talked about this on the show before because I have found it pretty funny. So I'll say a word like, the one I used was swell, because nobody says swell anymore. It's like, what, in the 50s or something? That's swell. So anyway, I threw it out there, and this is just me putting it out there. Just all of a sudden, I just start seeing it showing up everywhere. And this was before the days of your cell phone listening to you. I mean, look, this is going back a while, right? Like way back, like 10 years plus years ago, when your cell phone wasn't as intelligent as it is now. And I just started hearing it everywhere. And it just started popping up. Or in my mind, I would just think of a film, for example, I haven't seen, or a song. And all of a sudden, you're just hearing this song all the time. Now, this is in my head.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it out loud. I'm not doing anything. I'm just thinking about this song all the time. So I don't know. What is...
Well, I think what we focus on creates more. That's the thing, and that's one of the things I think that people run into with going back to cases of hauntings that people don't realize, is that when something happens in the house, they get super hyper focused on it, because they're like, this was weird, or this was scary, or oh my god, and they're calling their friends, and they're calling their family, and they're oh my god, they're laying in bed at night, they're thinking about this, whatever, and then lo and behold, something else happens. It's really similar to the first thing. And it's like, well, that's what happens. The more we focus on something, the more it expands. Like, we live in a very inclusive universe. It doesn't hear no. It just it just focuses on whatever you're thinking about, and then it starts to blow up and show up and whatever. And that's the loop people get into. It's like they're focused and focused and focused. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And then it's like, people that wake up in the morning and then stub their toe, and they're mad, and they're still mad an hour later that they stubbed their toe, and then they get a phone call, they've been fired, and then that gets them upset, and then the next upset happens, and the next upset happens, and it's just like then you're off and running, but it's like, I think it's the same thing with things like that, where we get focused on something, or we send it out there, and I mean, I firmly believe that what we send out there, it gets picked up, and it's like, whether we want to continue it or not, is really up to where our focus is. And, part of what I do with clients, or did with clients when I was doing it more often, was getting them off the subject of the haunting. And it's like, yeah, but this just happened. I know it just happened, but what are you going to do now? What are you going to do? Well, go paint, go do something else, but get your attention off of it, because you're going to line yourself up for another one. Yeah.
Right. I don't know. I find it,
it's fun.
It's fun. It's fascinating when you really, think about it, because we can project so much incredible energy. And there's what I always have found interesting about that is people who don't believe in anything. For example, like, you notice that when you're in a haunted location, because I used to do ghost tours, and more times than not, the wife or the girlfriend drag along her guy. You're
Yep.
coming on this ghost tour. And one night there was a man, and I'm doing the tour, and I look, and he's standing there with his hand out, and he's really rigid. And I walk up and I'm like, "You all right?" He's just like, "Something has my hand." I'm going, "Okay. How do you feel about that?" He goes, "I don't know." So I'm just like, "All right, well, why don't you just pull your hand away?" He goes, "I can do that." "Pretty sure you can. Yeah, you just pull it away. You're fine." He pulls his hand back, checks it to make sure it's still there, moves his little digits around, and, and I'm just
His little
laughing to myself.
digits. That's great.
Just use his little digits, but he said it felt like a tiny little hand holding my hand, and it was
Cool.
part of the story that there was allegedly this little ghost child, and she was just I said, "There must have just been something about you that she liked," and he just wasn't having it, but he just said, he goes, "I don't believe in any of this stuff." So I guess where I'm going with it is, why is it that the skeptics get all the best experiences? Like, they
Some of
don't
them do.
want it.
Yeah, some of them do, some of them don't. I mean, like, I think sometimes the skeptics actually manifest the non-happenings. Like,
Right.
I think, like, they say, "Well, nothing ever happens to me." Well, do you believe in it? No. Okay, well then,
And they're
like,
so hostile too,
yeah,
right?
totally. It's like with that
Right,
tone, right? Like, that's gotta
right,
be with that tone. No.
right.
Yeah, like, I think again, I think it comes down to resonance. And I think a lot of people too, like, they say, "I don't believe in this," or, "I don't know about," blah, 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 they're all, like, grouchy about it. But
Mhm,
I think a lot of them, that's their coping mechanism,
mhm,
because it's like, if I just say I don't believe in it, then I don't have to deal with it. Like, I've noticed a lot of skeptics over the years that I've dealt with, they're not actually skeptics, they're terrified. And, like, I can't remember where I was going. I was in the car with a bunch of people, and, this one guy said, "Oh, yeah," he's like, "Yeah, I don't believe in this stuff, blah, 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 blah," and I was like, "Oh, yeah," I said, and it was, like, the next night I was doing I don't know whether I was doing a tour or I was doing class or something. I'm like, "Well, you should come." "Oh, no, no, I don't wanna come." I'm like, "Why?" And he was like, "Well, that's scary. I don't wanna come." And I was like, "But I thought you didn't believe in any of it." And it was like, I blew up half of his brain when I said that. He didn't know what to do with that. But it was really funny. It was just like, "Oh, no, 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 I don't wanna that scares me. I don't wanna do that." Right? But it's like, I thought you didn't believe in it." "Oh, I don't." I was like, "Well, then what's the problem?" What's going on? But it's funny. So I think a lot of these people, it is a coping mechanism. Like, they're already trying to deal with understanding the physical part of their world,
Mm.
and then you're trying to interject this, like, uh this part of the world. Okay, now you have to understand what you can't see. And they're like, like, they're just,
That's tough. Yeah,
yeah, like, you're asking them
yeah.
to change the paradigm of their world. And it's like, it's not just like, "Oh, experience this new phenomenon." It's like, "No, you're asking me to rewrite how I deal with my environment."
Mhm,
I don't think a lot of them are ready for that. So it's like, I just don't believe in it.
mhm.
Sure.
Right. Hey, it's a tough pill to
Sure.
swallow for some
It
people,
is.
I mean, my father for years, it just made me feel like, you know no, it's the house settling, just I think that you're being silly. He's always very nice about it, but, I mean, I come my mom's side, they're full blown, poof, wide open, everything's going on, but later in life, when I'm an adult, my father just confesses to me, all this paranormal activity that he experienced and things he had seen, and I'm just looking at him going, "You know what?
Yeah.
You really had me questioning my own freaking sanity," and he's just like, "I just didn't really want to talk about it."
Yeah, they just don't wanna deal with it. It's funny too, like, when I find when you start to bring in facts about certain things, that's
Mm,
when they really get messed up as
mhm,
well, where it's like, "Oh, well, it's just this." Well, actually, no, and here's why. And
right.
then it's like, "I don't wanna deal with this. I don't wanna look at this."
Mhm,
There was a case that I was working in a part of Edmonton, and we had gone back to this house for quite a long time. It was a house built in 1910, and it was super active. The whole area was super active, but this house
mm,
was a lot of fun. And, the guy that rents the house, he had ended up to be a colleague of mine because he's a brilliant medium. But yeah, we ended up recording this really fascinating scenario in his house. We'd left cameras running, and all of a sudden in the video, you see the camera, like, something tilts the camera to one side, and you can see the light in the room is changing. Nobody was in the house at the time. And you could see like light was changing in the room, like somebody was passing in front of, like in the room around the camera. And then the camera was struggling focusing. So you could tell that the light was shifting because it was like in and out of focus.
Yes.
And then you could hear stuff moving around the kitchen. You could hear like bangs on the table or like glasses moving. You could hear like something was in the kitchen and there was huffing noises and there was all sorts of stuff going. It was a really cool video.
I love that. So phantom sounds are amazing.
Super cool. Yeah. Super neat. So anyway, so we came back in and whatever and disabled the camera. We're like, holy shit, something happened because the cameras moved and whatever. And so he brought this footage to his work because there was one guy at his work that was just like, this is stupid and you're an idiot and blah, blah, whatever.
Oh boy.
Like, take a look at this. And so the guy's like trying to go through explanations, but he's my friend Matt said literally you could watch the color drain out of this guy's face.
Yeah.
Like he was like, well, no, like that's
I can't unsee
like,
this now.
Like he was like struggling, and then all of a sudden he was like, I can't watch this. I can't watch this anymore. And he turned around and walked away, and he never brought it up again. But it was like the whole time before that, I don't believe in this. I don't believe in this. But it was like Matt said you could see this guy like he was having a breakdown, like in his body, he was having a breakdown
because he just realized, I think, in that situation that this exists in my world.
Yeah. And here it is on film.
Like yes, right.
Here it is on film. I can't, it's like, I can't even write this off as, I just made a mistake. It's like, this is on camera. I'm watching this happen on camera. And it's like, that's rough for people.
I've got a lot of that sort of footage and EVPs and phantom sounds and, chains dragging across a hardwood floor when it's on carpet. It's like that. And people just, they just can't go there. They just can't get their heads to go there. But when you think about it, it's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like that, some things are just, it's not all projection. It's not, which brings me to, let's talk malevolent hauntings and let's go with the D word.
Yeah.
God. I know. No, let's address it really. Because,
let's do it. Yeah.
Because I know incredible mediums, remote viewers who no, we have seen this. We know this exists. They're there. Are they aliens? Are they interdimensional? Like, are we just dealing with another race of entity of sorts?
Yeah.
What are they? I think that's what we need to figure out is what are they? It's not necessarily a religious thing because people condition, that's a demon. What is it really?
Yeah, I think it's such a huge question, and I think different religions and different cultures have tried to address it with words like demon and words like but everybody's got a different name for it.
Yeah,
and I remember when I was reading some of the remote viewing documents from the CIA when they were doing the Gateway project, and one of a very good friend of mine, Mark Soto, used to work on that. We used to work with them and worked with Robert Monroe and whatever. And they reported that when they were going into these sort of remote viewing meditation spaces, that they would run into these things sometimes. Like if they weren't in the right headspace, they would kind of run into these things and they were just like, we don't know what the hell these are. But they came to the conclusion, and I believe that they're right, is that they are some form of thought form. There's some sort of consciousness thought form that has been born out of whatever it is, similar to something like the Philip experiment, where you've got something that is now conscious. It's now responding to you. It is having interactions with you. But it's not, it wasn't a person. This was something that it operates completely differently. When I wrote my first book, Teaching the Living, my business partner, Stephanie and I, we started out our careers looking at these things because they were the cases like the Deborah Moffat cases like this that really fascinated us because we weren't so much interested in like what these things were, but we were, because I think that we could talk to the ends of the earth, but what we think it is.
Until we get there, we don't really know 100%, right?
We don't know, but we can look at their behavior and the behaviors they demonstrate, and then the behaviors that the people demonstrate that that interact with them.
Mhm.
And so that was the approach that Stephanie and I took really, really early on. And then so a
Mhm.
huge part of my first book was about that, was
Right.
about like, okay, let's take a look at how these things are, how they interact with people, what upsets them, what makes them happy,
Mhm.
what
Mhm.
what behaviors are they demonstrating. And we came to the conclusion, we found 3 distinct personality types and
Right.
behavior types within these things. And once we kind of identified those,
Mhm.
it was really easy to be like, oh, that's what this one's doing. And then
Mhm.
you could like bam, 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 predict within a upteenth of a second
Right.
what these things would do within a space and what would work to resolve it.
Right.
But yeah, and then everybody will go, well, what is it? Well, I mean, nobody's going to know that. I mean, we can't measure these things. We
Mhm.
don't know.
Yeah.
As I say, I think the CIA got very close with the idea that this was some sort of a thought form that's now
Mhm.
operating independently. Because oftentimes when people describe them,
Mhm.
they describe something, it mirrors something that's either in the environment or that they've got going on within them.
Mhm.
So like for example, we look at something like the Enfield haunting.
Oh,
The entity
yeah.
pulls from the owner that was prior there, Bill, and starts bluffing as Bill. I'm Bill. I died in this chair, so on and so forth.
Mhm.
And it starts talking like, oh, I'm Bill. Well, that's obviously not Bill, right? Like it's clearly it's not Bill, but it's
Right.
like, here it is finding things in the house that it can pull from, and it's creating this. They don't create anything new, right? They're just similar to the Philip experiment. They
Mhm.
pull whatever's in the environment.
I think it's just trying to deal with, even with people through recordings. I've got recordings. They're just growling
Yeah,
and just, like, communicating very
animalistic.
aggressively,
Yeah,
like very tangible, you know,
yep,
human words, growling, this and that. But people are seeing
yeah,
things, and they're being pushed, they're being shoved.
yeah. Bitten.
First thing that came to my mind is alien. Yeah. I mean, I think, you have your religious people who might say, "Demon, this is what it look like." You're gonna get you ufologist who goes, "Sounds like a big old reptilian to me." Like,
Yep.
you're getting on different ends of the spectrum again, but then you have everything in between,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
this is one of them.
And I think at the end of the day, regardless, it just comes back to consciousness. This all comes back to that overarching word.
Mhm.
Because that encompasses all of it. It encompasses aliens, it encompasses Bigfoot, it encompasses, I mean, no matter what it is,
Mhm.
it comes back to consciousness, this
Mhm.
sort of, outside intelligence, that,
Mhm.
this connection that we all have. And
Mhm.
like some of my biggest eye-opening experiences in the last number of years has been in the cryptozoology world, that is shifted how I view a lot of this stuff. And it's really brought me back to the sort of that fundamental word of this is all consciousness on some level that we
Mhm.
just don't we don't get it. Like we
Me too.
just don't understand. We've got so far to go.
Yes.
And I think we're getting these, like, it's like the elephant in the room, and we're getting like these little pieces of the elephant, and then we're trying to draw the rest of the elephant, but we can't see it.
Right.
And because we can't, we're like, well, we have this like little bit of it looks like a trunk, but I don't know what this is. Maybe this is a tail. I don't know. But and so then we're trying to draw the rest of it. And I think that's kind of what's going on.
Yes, I think it's one of those things that, we may never get, because consciousness is a pretty big thing. We can make a lot of assumptions.
Huge.
It's one thing, like, because, I've all the interviews I've done over the decades, it's just like, "Well, what are your thoughts on this?" I'm like, "I'll let you know when I get there."
Yeah.
I don't even wanna take a guess because it could be I could be so far out
Yeah.
of the ballpark with it that there is no tangible answer, I think, because it's different for everyone.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. And because everybody is creating their own reality, it is different for
Right.
everyone, right? Like we're
I
never
know.
ever
The
going to be
$1,000,000 just won't show up though, Morgan.
right. I just, yeah, it's it's
Yes,
it's
right.
such a huge it's such a huge thing. And that's the damn thing. Like, I mean, Dean Radin demonstrated it so brilliantly with the double slit experiment with, in physics, where as soon as you you've got these light rays that are in particles and waves and whatever. And then if you look at them, it'll turn into like either one or the other. Like it's just, that observation, that active observation, depending on what your perception of it is and
Right.
what your intention is, will alter the
That's true.
experiment. Right.
That's
So
right.
it's like, even the people that, and he's at the point now at the Institute of Noetic Science. This is funny, where he can't be a part of the experiment anymore because he's so conditioned now to seeing the one thing that he's screwing the experiment up. So he can't be
Oh.
he can't be in the room anymore. But yeah, like this is kind of, I think, the it's a microcosm of the macro problem that we're kind of facing, where everybody's walking into these situations and perceiving
Right.
wherever they're at,
Right.
and then saying, but that was my experience. And then you've got people going, well, no, you're wrong. Well, because my experience was this. And it's like, yeah, but that's not how this works though.
No.
So
No.
it's tough. I used to I taught in post-secondary for years. I was teaching parapsychology in the social work and psychology programs of a couple of colleges. And it was always so interesting to me because we'd have students come in from all over the world. We had students from that were indigenous. We had some from Haiti. We had from they're all over the place. And
Right.
every single one of them, of course, had a different color of what this was supposed to look like, right? Like, oh, it's a curse and, or voodoo, or this is this or that or whatever. Everybody's describing the same phenomenon, but they're all just, having these different experiences. And they would fight in the classroom, no, that's what it is. Cause that's what I experienced. And it's like, I have no doubt that that's what you experienced because that's where your foundation is. So it's like, you're going to create it. Like if that's where you're at, you're going to create it.
Well, there are people who teach you how to manifest,
Yeah.
how to manifest your reality.
Yep.
Do you think we're in a matrix?
Yeah, man.
I have to ask because
yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's something to that. I don't know if I don't know if I necessarily believe it's like all binary code and machines like like Neo, or anything.
Yes. Not to that extreme, but
not to that extreme, but
yeah.
I definitely think that when we die, we wake up from this. I think
Yes.
I definitely believe that. And I know just talking on my own podcast, just talking to so many people that have either had near-death experiences or whatever, that have it described exactly that, where it's like, oh man, it's like, yeah, I died. And then I woke up. And when I woke up, it was like the pure version of me. It was like just spirit and joy. And most of them don't even want to come back. They're just like, I'm done. Like, this is so amazing. I'm done with this, and then they're told no, you gotta, you're not done. Sorry.
Yes. No, we're not.
Get the hell back there,
Finish the job.
finish the job. But they always say, you remember this feeling though, you remember this connection, because when you go back there, you're going to need it. And, and so I think that's kind of what this is like, we're here, but what we're experiencing, we are creating, and we seem to have a consensus reality because we can all we can sit here and do this show together, and stuff like that. But I think there's, and I don't know whether you'd call that a pre-program or what, but I think that, our focus and our state of being and everything will move us in these various directions. Cause I'm a huge believer in manifestation.
Yes.
I practice that. I'm
Same.
huge. And, I've had some incredible things happen over my lifetime. You can't unsee. Once you work this stuff, you can't unsee it.
Well, once you're aware of it, I think that's, the biggest thing is trying to condition yourself to be aware of all the signs that the universe leaves you, not just so much what you're manifesting. I love synchronicities.
Yes. Huge.
Oh my gosh. Synchronicities, it's if you really start to recognize them, they're everywhere.
Absolutely. And the universe it has its own language,
Yes.
it really has its own language, and it sort of talks in whispers, but and once you start to understand how to read it, you really can clue in that it's like, oh man, this was meant for me, or that was meant for me, or you just know, and it just becomes like talking to an old friend. You just kind of, you see this stuff and
Yes. Oh, I remember going to see my mother before realizing that it was be my last time to see her. And I was just driving, and on the back of a transport, there was like my maiden name, just right across the back of the transport. And I just looked at it and went, huh, all
Wow.
right. And so I was going. But I went there to find out that she would be passing.
Wow.
So I was just kind of like, okay. You just start
Yeah.
noticing little things, and it's just like, wow, that's pretty cool. But now I notice things
Fascinating.
everywhere.
Yeah, we just did an episode recently. It was part one of another episode we've got coming out in September, but it was about the Edmonton Oilers, and the Edmonton Oilers, how this past hockey season, one of the things that they were really focused in learning how to do was like meditation and manifestation, and they actually brought in a guy that trains for that.
That's
And
excellent. I love
yeah,
that, though.
yeah, and we're gonna be having him on the show here in September. But
Beautiful.
and this is what this guy does, and he taught them, like, okay, you're gonna like forget about everybody else. You're gonna forget about what everybody else is doing. You are no longer a competing team. This is what you're focusing on. And they went from the tied for last place in November, like bottom of the barrel team. They just couldn't get it together
Wow.
to the Stanley Cup final.
Beautiful.
And yeah, and 16 run win streaks, bam, bam, bam. And everybody
So
was,
there's something to it.
yeah, everybody was going, how the hell are they doing this? Oh, they just, maybe they just got a new coach, or, oh, maybe they just got blah, blah, blah. And the Oilers, they were the first ones to say, it ain't that. It ain't that. And their goalie, who was the one, Stuart Skinner, who was the one that brought on this sports this psychologist who understood this manifestation stuff. He had been practicing it before he brought this guy in, and said, no, this is what's missing. And so between that guy and then the new coach, Chris Knobloch, that they brought in, the first thing that their new coach had said to them, and was quoted on saying to the team, was, "Oh, you've lost your joy." And he said, if you can find the joy, that's your only job, is find your joy in the game. And he's like, I don't care if you win or lose.
Right.
Find your joy. And as soon as they did that, it was the first game they played with Knobloch, bam, won it. Second game, bam, won
It's
it.
an energy thing too.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
empowering.
Hugely empowering. And when they began to see results, and they would, the media would be asking them, they'd pull them aside and go, well, what did you do for this game? What was it? And I remember their one fellow wingman, Zach Hyman, he said, if he's like, it's amazing what happens when you embrace joy and positivity. He's like, doors start opening. And he could only say so much to this guy, because the guy wanted the sports answer, right? Like he wanted the play-by-play. And Zach was like, yeah, but that's
But
what
it's
it
more
is.
of an enlightened.
Yeah.
It's an enlightened answer.
Yeah.
I think that's the answer. I mean, if you could put that thought form into the collective consciousness, can you imagine where we would be at today instead of where we're really at today?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, I think, with everything that's going on in the world right now, is that people are really going to have to make a choice, where it's like, do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy? And the majority of people will be like, yeah, but I'm right. And it's like, yeah, you could be. But at the end of the day, what is it? What is going to get you really what you want out of this life experience? Not out of the thing that you're angry about, but out of this life experience. What is it? And it's appreciation, it's joy, it's all the things that people consider success.
Gratitude, every day.
Appreciation.
Yes.
All of those things. And it's like, people are, and you see a lot, there's some groups of people right now that are they are angry as all hell. And they, who knows, maybe they're right. I don't know. But it's like, are you enjoying, are you having a good life right now though? Like, is this the legacy you're going for? I don't know.
And how many people don't participate in life?
Yeah. They just checked out.
Yes. They're just, existing. They're just going through the motions. They stop participating. And I think you have to be a participant in life because it's just like a
Yeah.
hamster in a wheel, other than that, and that's not good for your psyche at all.
Yeah. It's like
I mean, it's
being,
hard.
yeah, you have to choose to be as Dr. Phil says, the star in your own life, right? Like,
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
have to choose to star in your own life. And I think that's so true. And
Mm.
people that think, well, I'm just not going to play the game. Yeah, but you're in the game though. You are playing, and
You
like
have
not
no
participate.
choice. You're
Yeah,
here.
yeah, like not
Right.
participating is
Yes.
also a way to play the game. You can.
Yes.
I wouldn't advise it, but
Right.
it's like,
Right.
you might want to have a strategy for moving through this world.
Mhm.
I had a friend, of gosh, it was about 38 years. We ended up, not completely losing the friendship, but it was a large chunk of it because she was very, 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 very hung up on just every cause was, her new cause. And,
Mhm.
if I wasn't on board with the cause, then what the hell was wrong with me? And, whatever. And it
Oh,
was like, yeah. And it just, it got to the point where, like, I don't think she could figure me out because
mm,
she wanted that, that argument, that relation. And I'm not willing to go there.
right.
And I think, you can sit and just learn to just be, because
Mhm.
like that type of stuff, you want to attract something negative, be in that headspace and see where it gets you. Because I guarantee you, whether it shows up in a paranormal form or whether
Mhm.
it shows up in the rest of your life through anxiety or upset or anger or ruining
Which
your
can in
relationships.
turn bring
Yep,
in something else, right? Like,
100%.
put a bullseye on your back that way.
Absolutely. Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
it's what you put out comes back to you.
Every time. Every
Yeah.
single time.
Mhm.
And anybody that's, clinging to, what they think in the moment is like, the worst or most important thing or whatever. It's like,
Mhm.
you know, I think people, especially in this day and age, like they really need to look around them and start evaluating where it's getting them at this
Mhm.
point, right? Like,
Mhm.
is it helping? Is it kind to yourself? Is it kind to your children? Is it kind? Like, what are you getting out of being that angry,
Mhm.
right? Like, at what point are you gonna, can you look around and start seeing that appreciation and writing that gratitude list?
Well, then
Um,
you can get into ancestral, like, imprint, you know? Like
yeah,
like some people who feel like, for example, this was a past life. Well, maybe it's just part of like DNA imprinting, it's in your DNA, it's from your great-grandfather, who had this fear of this because he was in the war. So you have,
yeah.
like, I think emotionally, if it's a strong enough emotion, it will imprint into your physical, and then I think that gets passed down. Some people might call that karmic as well.
No. But then that's your job. Then you got to heal that, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I think,
Well,
because
somebody does.
somebody does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, at that
Yes.
point in time, you have to make that decision, right? Like,
Mhm.
we're creating all this stuff in our experience, and we get to choose. Like, that's the great thing about growing up and being an adult. Like, we're not responsible for the stuff
Mhm.
that happens to us as a kid, but we can do something about it now. So
Mm.
it's like, how do we choose to move through this world?
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people aren't making that conscious decision, right? They're allowing all this external stuff to
Mhm.
dictate how they're going to feel and how
Mhm.
they're going to move through the world. You can observe something that is not fun
Mhm.
and what you would inherently think would be negative, and observe it and then put it down
Mhm.
and find your inner peace and act from that space. Why
Mhm.
do you have to act from an angry space? You're the weakest. You are the weakest when you are the most angry.
Mhm. Well, we don't have control over what's happening in the world,
No.
but what we do have control over is how we handle it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
That's
it's like,
probably all we have control over.
yeah, we and how, deciding how, with what energy are we going to respond to it.
Mhm.
Like, I think back to, conflicts or whichever that I've had with, people over the years, somebody who's like, really, really mad or like really upset and, maybe over nothing, I don't know, but like somebody that's really pissed off and, they're yelling or whatever. And it's like, yeah, I have the choice that I could turn around and get yelly. Like, I could get yelly right back at them. I can get in their face. I could, like just, yeah, I mean, I could take that approach, but it's like, I think you hit this point where you realize that there's nothing, when you realize that you're impacting and creating your reality as you go, you start to realize that nothing that's going on outside is worth wrecking that inner center. Like, and once you can kind of become that observer and not pick that stuff up, then you can act from a clearer place. You can act from a place of intuition. You can act from a place of inspiration. Doesn't mean you don't have to do anything about it. Like if you feel like, man, I think I can change this situation, then great. But do it from a place of alignment. Don't do it from a place of fear or anxiety or frustration or whatever, because you're not going to get anywhere.
Well, I think I completely agree with you on that. And I think people need to talk more, because what people don't realize is if you don't resolve it here, you might just have to come back and resolve it again, or your children or grandchildren, or like it's going to be ongoing. You have to resolve it. And people don't talk to each other anymore.
No,
they
they
talk
don't.
at each other.
Yeah.
And talking to each other, you're lucky if you can have somebody that will come up to you and say, hey, this really bothers me, and have a conversation. Everybody's too offended all the time.
Yeah, and that's one of the worst things that
Yes.
that I think's going on right now in society is this I'm offended and I'm a victim thing. To me, it's one of the most destructive things that people can be doing, especially for their own pure greedy state of happiness. Because as soon as you do that, you're abdicating your power. Immediately, you are abdicating your power. You have grossly offended me. Well, there you go. You've just abdicated your power to somebody you probably don't even know. Like half the time it's somebody on Facebook that you're never ever going to see again. And it's like here you've again sort of goes back to the first conversation that we were having about this, this people with having these negative hauntings that are kind of in this victim mentality they don't want to get out of. It's like they mistake that for feeling powerful. And it's a really, really critical error, because they are abdicating their power. They think they're more powerful. They think that they're sitting there
But it's
going,
easy to be that way when you're behind a computer screen and you're not directly in front of somebody.
absolutely,
It's easy
yeah.
to be hurtful, or it might be the only opportunity they have to lash out if they've got something going on in their own lives. But in doing so, do you feel they're changing the dynamics of this on a conscious level?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I know a number of people that run the Global Consciousness Project, which for the audience is a number of random number generators that people have been monitoring over the years. And every time there's an emotional event, it triggers these random number generators, and you can actually kind of see. Yeah, it's really cool. They tried it at Burning Man. They when I want to say they did it with I think they did it with the Queen's funeral. But there was anyway throughout history they've watched. The 9/11 was another one that they watched, and they saw these spikes. So it's kind of interesting, but it seems to be like high emotionally impacted events that are really shifting it on that sort of global level. But I think just on an individual level for people, I think they're kind of the contrast that people that are aware and can sort of step out of this and sort of look at it from a little bit more of a observer perspective. They're sort of the contrast that's causing us to ask the question, how do I want to respond to the world in this? And you're going to get the people that are, even on the antisocial side of personality. Most trolls, they discovered, are actually on the sort of antisocial psychopathic end of the spectrum. The psychologists have realized that these people actually are like, they actually have personality disorders. Like there's some serious some serious stuff going on with these people.
Mm.
These people that like troll and are just like purposely writing these horrible things to people and whatever. But I think like, yeah, I think ultimately like these guys are the contrast of, do I want to walk through this world empowered and finding myself and actually putting something positive into the world, or am I going to sit there and degenerate into this, this angry person that's seeing the world through this lens? Because that's the other thing too, is like if you walk through the world and you believe you're the victim, the universe will show you that you are the victim. Like
Mhm.
it will do you that favor.
Mhm.
And you will start to create circumstances again and again and again where you're just being, see, I told you I'm the victim. See, I told you I'm the victim.
Mhm.
So it's
Well,
like,
it's giving you what it thinks you want,
absolutely. So it's
right?
like, yeah,
So
if you want to be the victim, by all means, the
mm,
universe will accommodate
right.
you. Yeah.
So do you think that we have these overseers that just watch us and like to make things go wrong in our lives?
I don't. I think we have entities that are there, and I've learned this through my life, that are absolutely there to assist us. I think they're there as a positive presence. I don't think that they can intervene in that way,
Mm.
nor do I think that they want to. I think they get joy out of watching this journey unfold, because
Do you
everyone
think
that
that they have some on the flip side that's just trying to sabotage?
I don't. I think what happens is we cut ourselves off from that abundance.
Mhm.
And I think the more negative we think and the more negative we kind of like pull ourselves into, whether we're
Mhm.
screaming at somebody online, we cut ourselves off from the abundance, in the same way that like, there's no dark switch when you turn the light off.
Mm.
It's like you can turn the light on or you can
Mhm.
turn the light off, but there's no dark switch. And
Right.
I think that's kind of how this is, where it's like, you can cut yourself off from that abundance, and it's like,
Mhm.
and that joy and all those good things happening, yeah, you can do that.
Mhm.
But as soon as you tune back into it and you kind of dip back into the flow again of
Mhm.
this stuff, then all this stuff just connects again, and you end up just like, oh man, oh, there is my good luck, or oh, there's my, whatever you're calling it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's interesting. There are some people who truly believe that somebody's out there's
It's
got it
that
out for
victim
them.
mentality again, though. It's that victim mentality, right? Like it's that
Yeah.
whole thing. Like it's got to be
Right.
somebody out there doing this thing to me, right? And it's,
Right. Or
yeah,
yeah, something
slipping
in the
right back
ether.
in. Yeah, yeah,
Well,
slipping right
I
back
mean,
in.
what are your thoughts then? So when we come here, there's a theory that we all plan this ahead of time for our spiritual growth and our evolution. And then you have players within our soul circle. We all
Yeah.
follow each other around. We role play, and then we've got the guy in the middle who's just like, nope, 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 nothing's going right for me. Nope, nope. And the rest of us are trying to evolve.
Yeah.
I mean, we all evolve at a different pace. Not everybody's allowed to come on the journey, or they can't catch up,
Yeah.
and they have to remain behind. So then, what do we just keep coming back till Buddy gets it? It's just like he
Yeah, like
catches
I
up.
don't know. I mean, I think sometimes I kind of wonder if, people just, when we're in non-physical, if some of those people sign up to be the villain, right?
Mhm.
Like it kind of makes me wonder, like, well, I'm going to test you. Like they often say that, your soulmate per se might not be your lover. It
No, it might
might,
be yeah,
yeah, it might be like
anger.
your worst enemy, right? Like,
Oh,
and
yeah,
then
that
you're just
yeah,
bam,
yeah,
and yeah, and it's like this
the
person is
teacher,
a teacher. They're designed to like teach you
right,
what you're supposed to understand. So,
right.
um,
That bad
yeah,
breakup, is just,
yeah, it's like
yeah.
you get to choose what you want from it. I always like the analogy, that you can have have a bad breakup, and you either get the lesson or you don't, but either way you're paying the tuition. And it's like, well, are you paying the tuition? Are you going to get nothing? Or are you going to
Right,
get something from the fact that you just paid this tuition and now you get something from it? And then again,
mhm,
it's like that's kind of the decision that you get to make is,
right,
do I pay that tuition for nothing, or, was it worth it?
right.
Yeah,
That's a tough one.
it
That's a tough
is.
one because people can't get their head around that. It's hard enough to get people to get their head around life. I'm just trying to make it through, their journey. But
Yeah.
when you're coming at them from different sides and saying, "Oh no, you have to do it this way.
Yeah.
People are just like, no, the condition. We're conditioned for A, B, and C. Religion, education, just your upbringing, your job. It's just very regimented. But yet you look at countries, and I'll use China as an example, just because they do teach meditation
Yep.
to their children from the time they're very young in school. Why don't we have anything like that?
Yeah, I think it's coming. Like there's been a number of programs over the years that that I've seen, like where students and stuff, they're trying to implement meditation, and there's a number of police forces as well that are implementing meditation now. And interestingly enough, like they found that the violence in the schools that have been through these courses goes way down. Like the test scoring and stuff goes way up, and the violence and stuff goes way down. And the police officers that go through it do like way better at their job.
Nice.
And yeah, so it's like, I think
Edmonton Oilers, same idea.
Edmonton Oilers, same
Right.
thing, right? So it's
Yeah.
like it's coming around slowly. But I think people are just really action oriented. Like we want it to be about the thing we're doing, like physically doing. And I'm like, I'm bad for this too, where I'm just like, my immediate thought is just like, well, I have to do this thing to fix it. And it's like, no, that's actually, it's probably the thing that you're trying to fix. It will happen despite your effort. The thing that you want will happen despite your effort, not because of your effort. So, yeah.
And that's hard too, because we want to think that we're instrumental in making that happen. But sometimes it just goes on, and we just sort of, what just happened?
Yeah.
How did I get to the finish line?
Yeah. Well, that's the one thing that, that the Oilers talked about a lot, where they said you get into this headspace where you weren't even they had to understand that they weren't the ones doing the scoring. It was what they were channeling that was doing the scoring. It was the energy that they were channeling, but they were the instrument to create it. So like they still had to be in shape. They still had to practice. They still had to do all those things, but it was
they're just the vessel.
They're the vessel. And it's like, and once they caught on to that, it was like, oh, and then you see, people like Connor McDavid doing all these like ridiculous hockey moves. And they're like, how are you doing this? Like, what is this going on? Like, how are you making this magic happen? And stuff would go on too. It was really interesting because I was really blessed to go to a lot of the games this year. And, it was so interesting to watch because stuff would happen on the ice that I don't think everybody was seeing. Like they would go to score, and the other team, I remember distinctly this happening. The other team, I can't remember who they were playing, but the one guy went to go and score against the Oilers. And as soon as he touched the puck, his stick exploded on the ice. And had he shot, and our goalie at the time, he was facing the other way. He didn't see the guy shoot.
Right.
Had the guy shot and hit that, he would have scored. Like there's no question he would have scored, but his stick shattered in the middle of the ice, and he had to zip off the ice and go get another stick. But it was like, what just happened?
That's power.
Like, did it? Yeah. Like, did everybody just see this happen? The stick just blew up. It was, it was really, really, it was wild. It was really, really wild. We had another player this year with the Oilers who's always been very, very controversial, Corey Perry. And he's hands down my favorite human beings. And he has a distinct set of manifestation rituals that he does for everything. And people would often film him. They'd see him off the rink, like doing these different rituals. And they were like, oh, Corey Perry's crazy. Right. And it was like, oh, I know exactly what he's doing. And he had to teach that part to the Oilers as well. He was like, no, let me show you the physical ritual part of how you create this. And it was really, it was the coolest thing.
Well, they have the last laugh right now.
Yeah.
Wayne says the Toronto Maple Leafs used pyramid power in the 70s to channel the energy.
Absolutely.
They were still a lousy team.
Yeah. Well, it's like, that's the alignment part, right? You can understand this stuff, but if you fall out of alignment, it's not going to matter. Yeah.
Yeah. At least it was an effort.
Totally.
For now.
Yeah. Even just a quick story. When the Colorado Avalanche won the cup, Nathan McKinnon, their star player, he turned around and he knew that they were going to win the cup that night, because when they got to the hotel room, he and Sidney Crosby of the Penguins, they are best friends, and they used to work at Tim Hortons together in Halifax. Yeah, they were like the window guys at Tim Hortons in Halifax. And so they came up together. And of course, Sidney Crosby's number is 87. And Nathan MacKinnon, they got to the hotel and everybody was like, man, this is it. Like, I don't know if we're going to win the cup, blah, blah, blah. And one of the players came up to Nathan and handed him his room key. And his room key was 87. And he said he knew at that moment that they'd won the cup.
Oh, see?
Yeah.
Synchronicity.
Yeah.
Again, it's just recognizing it. I think it's just, I love these success stories because
it's really cool. Yeah, they're paying attention. And so many people that really understand this stuff that we don't realize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's if you can be open to it, it can root itself, and there is no more effort.
Yeah.
To it. You just have to.
Effort is not our friend. Effort is not our friend. The alignment is our friend. And then when we're in alignment, the effort is inspired. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's what I found so much over the years, where it's like, if I'm just like super hyper focused on something, let it go. Mm-hmm. Because as soon as you let it go, let your mind go or whatever, mm-hmm. it's not that you won't have to put effort in. Because I think a lot of people mess that up. They're like, well, what am I supposed to do? Just sit on my couch and meditate? No. But you could start there. But it's like, but then, you might be sitting on the couch and meditating. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I've got an idea. Right. And then you get pulled to go do whatever that is, but it's coming from a different place. It's not coming from effort. It's coming from like, oh, I know, I should go do this thing. And it might be something super stupid. Like I'm going to go make myself a sandwich. And then you go into the kitchen and then somebody's left something on the counter and you're like, oh, what's this? And then it's like an idea. And then, but there's always something, but it always comes from that alignment space.
Awareness. I always talk about awareness, evolution. It's to me, they go hand in hand. Just be aware.
Absolutely.
Pay attention.
Yeah.
So coming back full circle as we slowly come, to the top of the hour, paranormal, where would you like to see it go? Out the door, or or where would you really like to see it go? And how would you like to see it evolve?
Oh gosh, I think, and this is one of the things that I'm trying to do with Blue Ant Media right now, and we're working on some of their shows, is that I want to see it in a place where people are, able to turn on their TV and get good information, because that's where people get their information from. They're not going to sit and read a pile of white papers. People just don't have time for that.
And people don't have access to,
some of them don't have access, and some of them just, it's too much, right? Like, and you don't remember things if you're bored, right? So, I mean, to me, what I would love to see is have this information in parapsychology accessible to people in a way that was truthful, and was fun. Because as soon as it gets fun, then you're paying attention. People are going to remember it. And so, I would like to see people understand that it's not all about the ghosts in your house. This is something way broader than that. Parapsychology is about asking the big questions of consciousness and understanding who we are, as spiritual beings, as you were saying, walking through this world. This is, I think this is the day and age and the time where people need this now. This is the time for it. If there's ever a time for this subject matter, this is it. When we understand survival after death, when we understand it starts to reshape how we're responding to what's going on in the world.
Well, I think you're a good start for that. And I commend Blue Ant for taking the initiative, because I know, after spending 2 decades in various media, that they have a formula to follow, a narrative, and nobody wants to step away from the formula. And when you're looking at a formula, it's not just, for example, one production company, or it's everybody. Everybody follows. Yes, everybody follows it, and then all of a sudden somebody says, we're going to change it. Then everybody jumps over to there, and this is where I think the problem is, because you have to rely on the media. If this is what people are going for, then you need to show due diligence. You need to have that drive to want to get it out, because people are, I think I like to say we're in a day and age, we have been for a long time, where people want real answers.
Yep.
They
I
don't
agree.
want to just follow people running around screaming at an investigation. They want tangible answers, whatever it may involve. I
Yeah.
mean,
And
there are a lot of people who want it.
yeah, and there's a lot of people too, I think, that want, the jump scares and everything. That's fun and fine, but then they're asking, now what? Like, they're going, okay, well, that was fun, but I still want to talk to my grandma who passed away, or I still want to talk to, like, now what? Like, what is there then? Because we know, like, they inherently know that this stuff's not, like, that stuff isn't real. Like, I think they all know by this point that, Zach Baggins is making up crap on his show, right? Like, I mean, everybody kind of knows that it's like, okay, that's entertainment, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, and that was fun and that had its day. But now it's like, and I think part of it is the state of the world, that where we're at right now,
Mhm.
is people are going, okay, but what about life after death though? For real?
Well, a lot of people
You
have
know?
experienced great loss in their lives. I'm one of them.
Absolutely.
I lost both my parents in 15 months.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Like,
Yeah, just
yeah.
recently. So it's like,
Oh my
okay,
gosh.
you know,
Yeah.
but
It
I'm
hit.
aware of what's after. But do you think because of the stigma of parapsychology being the science-based explanation, do you think that people might fear, and I'm only asking because you triggered it when you said people want to know, what about my grandmother that I want to talk to? What about my loved ones? Do you think beyond questioning mortality, do you think that they won't find it, or they're afraid they won't find it if everything is science-based?
Yeah, I think they're afraid. I think they think that science is there to debunk it
Okay.
somehow. That
Yeah.
it's um that well, science means that, and part of that is science, like the scientists themselves. Part of it's their fault,
Right.
because you've got a lot of people that are swinging the hammer of scientism
Mhm.
in like a absolute hammer of Thor.
Mhm.
Like you've got people out there that are they're
Abusing
science
it.
science has become a religion, right? Where it's just like, this is the way it is, and this is, and most of it's completely wrong.
Mhm.
They've completely forgotten that science is a tool,
Mhm.
and that is constantly evolving and changing, and now we're way ahead of this, and we're not, at this point, we're not even trying to debate
Mhm.
consciousness. We know that it's there. We have the proof that it's there. We're now trying to understand it, but they're
Mhm.
back on their, I don't know, like it's less like a religion for them at that point.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you've got these people, I think, that have been beaten up by trolls like that have
Mhm.
said, this isn't real, and I know because I read it in my textbook in grade 10.
Mhm.
And it's outdated information and it's
Mhm.
wrong.
Mhm.
So I think that's part of it, right? And you've still got, even in academia, like a lot of my colleagues are professors and psychologists and things like
Mhm.
that. And even in academia, there's still that stigma of like, how dare you bring this to the forefront?
Yeah, how
Don't
dare
do
you
that.
step outside the
Yeah,
box.
don't you study that. That's
Right.
like Dean Radin, who you know he's, I mean, God knows how many papers he's published and how many books and whatever. He was putting out, when we had him on my podcast, we he was saying, he said he put out a paper or whatever about consciousness, and I think it was about um uh thought and altering consciousness and all this stuff
Mhm.
and whatever. And he actually got threats from people saying, like, if you don't take this down, yeah, like it was horrendous. So
Wow.
yeah, so there's like even people in academia that are like threatening,
It's like the
pure,
field of archaeology. It has to be like it's like a good old boys club, but then it becomes
yeah.
about funding too.
Yeah, well, yeah,
So,
and then they'll pull the funding
yeah,
out of something, right? So which
right,
is why you get organizations like the Monroe Institute or Institute
right.
of Noetic Science that have, or even the Rhine, right? Who
Yes.
have like pulled outside of like Duke University or whatever. They've just pulled outside of it because they're just like, no, we're gonna just be out here,
Do
and
our
then
own
you guys,
thing.
yeah, then you guys can't rip funding or control what we're doing
Mhm.
and whatever, because yeah, you'll get these people that are just completely hung up on this worldview that is completely outdated.
Mhm. And that's, I think, the struggle when you're dealing with anything, if you're trying to advance with your information. And I think parapsychology has had a bad rap.
Yeah.
I think the paranormal came in and took over to a point where parapsychology, and the experiments and everything else got put into the back seat for a while because it was just too easy to follow suit because everybody could do it, you see. Everybody could just go out and go to the science store, buy something, or buy your little gadgets, and you could do things. It's easy. Everybody could do it from home. Everybody could just walk down to the cemetery, walk down over here, do whatever. And cemeteries aren't all haunted, just so y'all know. But
Right.
but,
Yes.
but it's something that the common person could do. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I just mean like anybody could do it. I mean, heck, there are kids doing it. So getting into parapsychology now, after a while, you have the same old thing doing the circuit and again, media. And now people are like, well, we want better answers. So now people are ready, I believe, to get into what the academics are doing with parapsychology.
Yep.
Right.
And that's what I'm really trying to bring to at least the little segments that I get on the shows, is that where, if and they've learned now to ask me.
Ah,
What did they learn to ask? Because I'm not one of these people that they'll say that they can say, well, can you just say this about this? No, I'll tell you that's
mhm.
not what I do. If
Well, I
you're
could just end up on the cutting room floor anyway.
well, yeah, like I mean, yeah, like I mean, but they've started to realize, and I think this is why they keep me around. I think they've started to realize that the comments that people are coming back, like, and I get emails or whatever for after I'm on a show or whatever,
Mhm.
and people. Usually the comment they make to me is, I really like your commentary. It's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, I firmly believe people know the truth when they hear it. And I mean, not to say I'm always right about this stuff for sure. I mean, I've got a
No, but if you
long way to
explain it in
go.
a way people can understand,
Yeah.
then you
And then
planted the
back it up
seed, right?
right?
Yeah,
Like, I mean,
yeah.
if I'm talking about something or like I can cite what I'm,
Mhm.
what I'm saying back to
Right.
a study from whatever. And
Mm.
I think that's why they keep me around, is because, I'm not the, oh my God, there's something in the, in the dark
Right,
shadow or whatever, but I
right.
can turn around and I can tell you, I can pretty much tell you, like, what the theories are, what has been studied over the years. This is
Mhm.
what it could be.
Mhm.
Bam, bam, bam. And here's where you can go look it up.
Right.
Don't just take my word for it. Here's where you can go look
Here's
it up. And
find
it's just,
it.
yeah, yeah. So I think that that's really making a big difference. And I think that's why people are like, oh, well, maybe I should listen a little bit, take this a little bit more seriously than just, thinking it's some, oh, the ghost hasn't crossed over. It's like, oh
Mm.
God, here we go. Yeah. So
So
let's get
Dolly is
rid of
saying,
that.
is parapsychology an accepted science?
It depends on the circles you run with.
Right.
Like, for example, in the US, in the UK,
Yeah.
you get your PhD in parapsychology.
Yeah.
It's the
Well, it's part
academic
of the
course.
psychology courses.
It
Yeah,
is,
as
but in
well.
Canada, parapsychology is not recognized as a doctorate.
Ooh.
So it depends on the circles you run in, but
Right.
is parapsychology a recognized science? Yeah, absolutely it is. I mean,
Mhm.
you can take this in university. You can, I mean, as I said, I taught it in post-secondary.
Mhm.
You can go and get your PhD in parapsychology, hands down.
Mhm.
Northampton, University of Northampton offers it.
Mhm.
A lot of these major universities, like Princeton had a parapsychology lab,
Mhm.
Yale just opened one. It's called COPE, I think.
Mhm.
All these major, there's an interest there. People want to talk about this stuff, but
Mhm.
it's like, I think you've got the majority of people that are like completely gung ho about it. And then you've got the fringe around it that are saying this doesn't exist, and they're really noisy. Right? So you've got all these really noisy voices going, this is stupid,
Mhm.
this is well, statistically it's not.
Right.
Statistically, most people have had a paranormal experience,
Mhm.
statistically.
Yes.
So you're not the fringe minority as they want to make you out to
Right.
be. But here you've got, yeah, I mean, so it is very accepted. The one link that I always send people to, if they want to dig into this, is called the Psi Encyclopedia, PSI Encyclopedia. It's online. It's by the Society of Psychical Research, and it's phenomenal. If you want to go down the rabbit hole of this, that's where you go. I use it constantly. and it's got some of the best articles, in my opinion, ever done about this. It's definitely one of the most extensive histories of
Right.
psychology. And another thing too that I think people don't realize, that always blows people's mind, is the fact that the largest parapsychology lab in the world, or parapsychology library in the world, is at Cambridge. And
Yes.
Cambridge, you
Yes.
know, so it's like, you want to
Cambridge
know if this is an
University.
accepted science.
Right.
Cambridge University has the largest library. So there you
Well, I think the UK had it together with that long time ago.
they did.
They've been doing proper investigating and research for like 100 years at least,
Oh,
not more.
yeah.
1700s.
Yeah, 1800s for sure, because the
Yeah.
Society of Psychical Research was like 1882, I think.
Right.
Yeah, but it was, I mean, they started really early, and they started this. The SPR started by trying to get rid of the hoaxers, was
Mhm.
originally how they started. But
Mhm.
and then they kind of branched out into realizing, like, actually we can expand this into more than that. But they were
Mm.
trying to knock out the hoaxers, to be like, you guys got to stop that.
Right. Well, it
Yeah.
makes it hard for all the good kids.
Well,
So
yeah, as well, especially with this AI shit coming out. It's
Oh,
like,
I know.
yeah,
That would be a whole other thing right
it's a
there,
whole,
but,
it's
you know.
making things really hard. So yeah.
So, tell us, what you have coming up. How can we find you?
Oh gosh. So, well, first of all, I'd love to thank you guys for having me. Thank you, Michelle, and thank
Oh,
everybody that's listening.
pleasure. Pleasure.
Um, but I'd love to have everybody join us on my podcast, Supernatural Circumstances. Yeah, myself and my co-host Mike Brown. We talk about this stuff, the for real stuff.
Right.
And we have on the best minds in the world. We had on Matt Baglio, who wrote, he was the journalist that wrote the movie The Right with Anthony Hopkins.
Very nice.
We've had
Yes.
we've had on, of course, Eben Alexander, as I've talked about. We've had on Lloyd Auerbach. We have on their regulars on the show. So, I mean, we delve into cases and subject matter that's like, it's crazy. It will blow your mind, but it's all real, and it's all talked about by.
And when is your show on?
It is bi-weekly. So it's on Mondays bi-weekly, and it's anywhere you can get it. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it, it's there. You'll find it. Just search Supernatural Circumstances. One of my new shows, My Haunted Hometown, is going to be coming out in October, and that's going to be Travel Channel and T&E in Canada, and the usual Discovery Plus. I'm not on all the episodes, but I'm on a huge chunk of the episodes, so I can't vouch for whatever the hell everybody else is saying, but I can say I'm going to be on that one, talking expert stuff and whatever. And so those are the two biggies. But yeah, I'd love for people to join us on the podcast, because it's that some of the discussions that we have, I learn every single time I do an episode of that show. It's crazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's the objective.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
why the Outer Realm exists. It's just bringing people on
Totally.
and listening to their data, their research, their stories, their experiences, whether you all agree or not. The fact is that even if you can learn one thing, and I learned just as much from people as the audience does, and I love it.
Yeah, me too.
I love it. But thank you for joining me this evening. I would love to do it again sometime with you.
Absolutely. You just give me a shout and we'll set it up.
Yeah, maybe we'll do something for Spooky Month.
Hey, it's a really good idea, because it's coming up.
It is coming up.
No.
And I say we do it.
Let's do it. Yeah.
All right.
We'll figure it out. Just, know where to find me.
I will. And I will find you, and I will message you.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Morgan.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Hey, good night. Well, we've come to the end of another fantastic segment of the Outer Realm. And Morgan, isn't she lovely? Yes, I have nice friends. So Wednesday night, we welcome the return of dear friend Nathaniel Gillis. As I'm counting down the time here, he's going to be talking necronetics. Yep, it's a study of the self-replication of species. Evidence suggests that the dream demon, being the incubus and possession, all play a role in it. And that's just for starters. So make sure you tune in. Thursday, we welcome John Myler, Cyber Operations Chief, retired, of the 144th Fighter Wing U.S. Western Air Defense Sector, author and pioneer of Christian ufology, which is a very unique blend of UFO research and end-time prophecies. So definitely going to be worth watching. And I will leave you guys with, I haven't had time tonight for one podcast awards, and it's going to be this one. Meantime, have a good weekend, guys. See you next week.
News on the flip side. It's time for you to get out and nominate your favorite podcast. There's an amazing show I want you to consider for the People's Choice Podcast Awards. The News on the Flip Side, in the category of politics and news. News on the Flip Side is a much different news and political program, which is not deemed as opinion news. Listen as anchor host Joe Montaldo brings you just the facts from trusted sources, which will allow you, the people, to make up your own minds on the various stories being reported on. Go to podcast